Kody Brown's nephew, specifically Kody Brown's brother's son, has been actively reacting to Kody Brown's family show. Y'all, train wreck don't even begin to describe this mess right here. Now, one thing that is evident and obvious to me is that Benjamin Brown clearly has some built up emotions and frustrations and things he wants to get off his chest. Like all of these young adults, I hope they're getting the professional mental health that they clearly need. This environment they grew up in, tragic, to say the least. Here is Benjamin Brown giving you a rundown, if you haven't heard already, which you probably have. And if you have, thank you for clicking on this video. Just take a listen again. And be sure you meet me in the comments below with your thoughts and opinions. Don't forget to like and share. And as always, I hope you subscribe.
A comic out here in the wicked world, and I also happen to be one of the many nephews of the Sister Wives family. I'm watching the Sister Wives show for the first time, and I'm telling you what I think about it. At the risk of pointing out the obvious, the intro did not age well. The twinkling music, Kody talking, my family, I can't wait for you to meet my family. It was a little gross. It felt like a hyper-romanticization of the idea of family without actually engaging in the reality of your family. Like, I think that he's in love with the idea of having a really big, awesome family and not actually doing the work of engaging in the real relationships of that family. It actually reminds me of my dad quite a lot. My dad had this shirt that he wore all the time growing up where it said, anyone can be a father. It takes someone special to be a daddy. Which he took as being like he was a daddy, right? Like he was a special person. He wasn't just a father, he was a daddy. But he never did any of the things that a daddy would do. Like he never played with me with my Legos. That's what I would have wanted from my daddy. He never did that. If I were to ask him today what one of my favorite things as a kid was, it was dinosaurs. I doubt that he could tell you. Meaning that he didn't actually know who I was. He just liked the idea of being a dad. But being a dad is more than just an idea. It's actually engaging in the lives of your children and taking an interest in them and helping them out. None of which my dad did, and it doesn't really seem like that's how Kody shows up either. And the catchphrase, love should be multiplied, not divided, is stupid and dumb. Because what is love if not attention and time? And you have finite attention and time as a parent, as a spouse, and so if you are dividing up that attention and time among 18 children and 4 wives, it is divided. So you can spout all of the lovely nonsense of like, oh, we're multiplying our love. But the actual reality is that you're not spending time with those family relationships because you have too many of them. That's actually one of my biggest problems with polygamy as a lifestyle in general, is that it's not good for children because children require a lot of attention, and you don't get a lot of attention when you're a polygamous child. You get very little. And not only do you get very little, the older children often end up becoming the parents of the younger children, which is exactly what we saw in episode 1 with Logan. Logan is essentially acting as the dad of his siblings. His mom wakes up early, goes to work. He gets up, makes the kids breakfast, gets them ready for school, sends them off to school, and he's just dutifully doing it because he's a good fucking kid. And then you hear him at the end, he's like, yeah, this is pretty much how it goes. That's pretty much how it goes in big families like that. You don't get the amount of care that you need as a young child, and if you're one of the older children, you end up being a parent. Moving on, the next thing that I really noticed about this episode is that it's really obvious who the main character is, and that's Kody, and that is very indicative of the patriarchal culture of Mormon polygamy. And just Mormonism in general, it's not just in the polygamous versions of it. Everything is filtered through his experience, his wives, his children, his story, his narration, his car. It's all about him. I think that's entirely Kody's fault. I think that's the system's fault. I think the system of Mormonism says that men should be the center of the world, and then men become the center of the world. And I think that's just as bad for men as it is for the women and children. Because the human mind is not designed to be the center of the world. If you tell someone that they're the most important thing and that they have the literal power of God, they become narcissists. They almost can't help it. The human psyche is not designed to withstand that kind of brainwashing. I think it's also really interesting to pay attention to the body language of everyone involved as they're talking, because there's a lot of sort of saying the right things and then shaking the heads no. Like at one point, Christine is talking about how she's so excited for, Robin and Kody to do the thing because gosh darn it, they better. And she's shaking her head like this. Gosh darn it, they better. This narrative that I hear over and over and over again in that episode, which is that women are the ones choosing this, but it's always a man saying that. Like Kody says, my mom chose this worldview. He tells that story. He talks about how Mary chose this. There's a lot of talking by men about how the women are the ones in charge and that the women are in choice and that the women have freedom. And isn't it great how much freedom the women have? Let's see, what else? Oh, one side note. At one point, Logan says, somebody once referred to us as pliglets. That somebody? Me. That was me. You're welcome, universe. We needed that word. I invented it. I thought it was funny at one point, Mary says something like, it's not uncommon to marry in our culture at 19 or 20. Try 17 or 18, or maybe even 16. Not uncommon. It's not uncommon. It's uncommon to not be married by 19 or 20. There were quite a few things in this episode that really rubbed me the wrong way. One of them was when everyone is like chasing a little Gwen around trying to pull her teeth, even though she's obviously said no. And this is just a real clear example of the total lack of bodily autonomy that exists in Mormon culture. Basically, Mormonism teaches you, grooms you from a very young age to override people's physical boundaries all the time. It's actually a key part of the Mormon temple experience is to be physically touching people without their knowledge or consent in a way to override their bodily autonomy. I see that a lot in that episode with the Gwen thing, with Kody demanding kisses and hugs from people even though they don't really want to. It's just weird and uncomfortable. It was also really disturbing how often Kody referred to Mary as being the bait, because number one, Mary's a person, and number two, what do you use bait for? It's the same reason I have a problem with Jesus being referred to as the Good Shepherd. What do shepherds do? At another point in the episode, Christine talks about if you're having problems, add a third wife, which is very common advice in polygamy, and it's a very stupid idea. It's actually not designed to make things better. It's designed to get you deeper into the cult. It's the same reason why all Mormons have kids immediately, because the quicker you have kids, the more you get tied in familially to this cult, the harder it is for you to get out. I also thought that part where Christine says that she really loved Kody a lot and he kind of loved her is very indicative of what's to come. It's polygamy in a nutshell. The women all are supposed to love the men, and the men are sort of supposed to love the women, kind of. And it's also indicative of the way that polygamy brainwashes young girls into believing that marrying married men is preferable to marrying single men. This is something that's happened to multiple of my sisters, and my dad has kind of made that happen by using his priesthood authority to give them blessings, which are basically like prophetic visions of their future, telling them that they'll marry someone who's already married. So then they do later on in their life, and they choose it, but they've been groomed to think that since they were like 3. So is it choice? I don't know. And there's a lot of talk in this episode about choosing this lifestyle, about how it's freedom, how it makes you so free, which is just tragic, because what are they free to do? To babysit their husband's kids while he goes down to hit on Robin and St. George? That's not great freedom. Also, the way that they introduced this idea of Robin into the family was uncomfortable for me, because it felt like it was about getting everyone to agree rather than letting everyone have an equal voice about what they thought. I want to give mad props to my cousin Aspen for speaking up. She was like, it's just weird. Thank you for saying the quiet part out loud. It is just weird. And there was something in that conversation that was really icky to me, which was this little clip of Kody saying, hey, this is family business, so we're not going to talk about it outside. This is family business. And that's part of the secret keeping that's just enmeshed in Mormon culture. That there's a face that we show the outside world, and then there's what happens on the inside, and that just breeds abuse throughout that culture. It's really awful. And it makes it really difficult for people like me who start to speak up about that abuse, because we're airing the family business for the world, and that's not cool. because it's family business, and family business, it leads to lives of incongruence, because there's like this public image that you're supposed to present, and then there's the private truth of what's actually happening. And that creates a real lack of integrity in Mormon culture, because we're supposed to present this really good facade, but see, really what's happening is manipulation, abuse, neglect, just sadness. And then lastly, when Mary's talking at the very end about how jealousy is something that she's supposed to overcome, I just wanted to like grab her and shake her and be like, bitch, your jealousy is telling you something. Emotions are there to guide you. But in Mormonism, you're taught to squelch those feelings or overcome those feelings rather than listen to those feelings. Why are you jealous? Why are you angry? What is happening in your world that's making you feel that way?